host, Ellen Nicole.
And I'm your host, Eileen Nikita.
And welcome to the Instant Caregiver. Before we get started, we'd like to ask that you hit that like button, hit subscribe, and then share with everyone who you think might benefit from our podcast.
And it's free.
So this week we're talking about the ins and out of HR from a caregiver's perspective. Eileen Nikita is actually an HR expert. It's her field. So today we're going to talk about all the things that you need to know if you're a caregiver and actually working either in or outside the home. What prompted this this podcast today was my own personal experience. We've talked about it before, but when I first brought my mom home, I was actually working from home, actually for care, and doesn't really matter what kind of facility, but I was working from home. I was in healthcare, and we would have instances where if you had to come into the office, they will let you know. They would give you like 1 or 2 days notice, usually for a meeting, or if they felt like you needed extra training. But it was a Monday, and my supervisor sent me an email, said, we need you to come in for 30 days on Wednesday. And I remember thinking, like, how am I going to do that? Because my sister and I, it was at the beginning of our caregiving journey. We haven't even talked about the money aspect of it and how difficult it was the first year. But anyway, I did not have a CNA. We didn't have a CNA. It was both of us taking care of our mom. And I asked my boss if I could not come in on Wednesday, but if I could come in on Friday so that I could find caregiver or find what we could do to help with my mom. They knew that we had taken her out of the nursing home and we were taking care of her from home. And I thought, because I worked in healthcare, that they would be understanding of the fact that I would need to have someone help us. But really, my boss sent me an email back saying, well, we think that healthcare is just like having childcare. And if you had a child, you would have already had, a babysitter in line. That's what we expect of you. So no, you can't come in on Friday. You have to come in on Wednesday. And then again, that was the beginning of my journey with caregiving while working from home. And I just realized, okay, I've got to figure out what I needed to do. And like I said, it was the first year I hadn't had FMLA, but I'll talk a little bit more about how I ended up getting FMLA, and that really, really helped me. So.
Yeah, Nicole, thank you so much for that, because that is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast today, is because how important it is to understand FMLA. And me being an HR executive and also a leave administrator, it's just amazing to me that a lot of people just don't know. And I will be honest, your employer set up these things. It is to help you, but the policies are put in place, but it's also to help the employer. And so these are certain things that we're going to talk about that most people just don't really understand and what it really means. We're going to talk about what is the difference between regular FMLA and intermittent FMLA. Those are the two different things, and people really don't know the difference. And then also we're going to talk about long-term and short-term disability and what's the difference between those two. And then we're going to talk about counseling and EAP, which is really, really important. And then elder care referrals. And so let's talk about FMLA first. So FMLA was created in 1993. I remember it. I was in college and everything, and we had to study about it. So basically, the FMLA, what it does, it protects your job for 12 weeks. That's the first thing it does. Now, it doesn't automatically give you PTO time or vacation and sick time, but it just says that during this FMLA time, your job cannot be posted. They can't put someone in your position. It is to secure your job. Now, the second part of FMLA is the intermittent. So intermittent means you don't have to take 12 weeks all at one given time. So if you're having surgery and you need to be out for 12 weeks, the regular FMLA will work for you. But let's say you're a caregiver.
Like my story, as it comes to like FMLA, when I was working for a year, I could tell that my job was not going to, well, I knew that my job was not really going to be forgiving if I needed to leave, meaning log off, not do what I needed to do for that day. So when I got to my 1 year mark, I applied for FMLA, and she's going to talk more about it. I got intermittent FMLA. So basically I had my mom's doctor. She was on hospice when she first came. So we had the hospice administrator fill out the paperwork, and it basically allowed me to miss up to 5 days, 5 days a week, how many hours I needed. So it allowed me to take off whenever I needed to help with my mom.
Right. And so, like I said, so the intermittent, some companies do require that you have a set schedule. Now, if it's a loved one that you're taking to the doctor or something like that, most companies do require you to set a set schedule. Of course, that's not going to work for everybody all the time. And so a lot of people don't even know that they can do intermittent FMLA. A lot of times employers will say, oh, you need to take the whole 12 weeks. And that simply just is not the case. And so working in leave and administration, a lot of people just don't understand that. And the other part of FMLA and intermittent is that your benefits should be protected. You are not supposed to be terminated with your benefits, even if you don't have any PTO time, if you're not paying for your benefits, because that was the whole point of setting up this law, so that you don't lose your benefits during this time. Now, let's just say that you are not getting paid during this whole intermittent or your 12 weeks. You still should have benefits, because what the employer is supposed to do is either you can send them money in during the time that you're on leave, or they can just give you a bill when you come back. So don't ever let someone tell you that, oh no, you didn't pay for your benefits, so we're going to term you. That simply is not the case.
And can I add something too? Like, sure. I know for me, I didn't have a lot of PTO time, but that didn't mean I couldn't use my intermittent FMLA.
Right.
So when I ran out of which is paid time off, when I ran out of my paid time off, I could still take my FMLA. I think I got like 82 weeks. I was unpaid. And that's one of the things that, they were trying to do earlier, was to offer paid FMLA, but I was unpaid, but I still was able to take off. I didn't get paid, obviously, but I had job security, which is the main point of FMLA.
Right. And so some people get confused saying that because the law does not require you to use your PTO doing FMLA. However, some employers may say, well, we want you to use it if you have it. And, that's some employers, but the law does not require it, but your employer may. And so the other part of it about FMLA is that you are going to have to do a certification. Some companies make you do a certification either once a year or every 30 days, which, can be really financial stressing, because some doctor's office require you to pay for that certification. So, it's always best to make sure you read those fine lines when you're doing your FMLA leave.
I have a question for you. So yes. If you're talking about FMLA from a caregiver's perspective, that means that your loved one, the person that you're caring for, their doctor has to complete that, right?
Correct. Their doctor has to complete that, and that's the thing, is that it's a little bit more difficult to get FMLA when it's someone else, not your own medical condition, because that doctor is going to have to explain what your role is, as their caretaker. So yes, Nicole, that's a very good question. And I wish what we could do is like have people send questions in, and then we could really go through those. But I just know those are the things that come up every time I'm talking to a, one of my employees or something like that, or somebody I'm working with, that they have to make sure it's their doctors. And then also, people don't realize as a caregiver, you can still take FMLA because you're having to deal with mental issues as a caregiver. So you can take FMLA just for that, as long as you have a doctor that can say that you need time away for mental illness yourself.
Also, you guys, if you want to ask questions in the comment box, that's what they're for. So eventually we'll probably do some lives. But for now, if you have any kind of questions or comments, please leave them, and we will definitely
provide
you with the answer that if we can, for
right,
sure.
Right. And the next thing we're going to talk about is long-term care versus short-term disability. Well, actually, there are two. There's short-term disability and long-term disability. So let's talk about the short-term disability. And people don't realize that short-term disability still falls under FMLA. But let's just say hypothetically, you don't have any PTO, but you qualify for FMLA. So if your company has short-term disability, you can get a certain percentage of your salary while you're out on FMLA.
And let me, my mini story to that is when I took off for FMLA, I had Lincoln Financial. They explained for me that if you're caring for someone else, again, we're talking from a caregiver's perspective, I was not able to do the short-term or long-term disability, meaning I wouldn't get paid because it wasn't for me. Since I'm a caregiver, it was for my mom, so I didn't qualify. But like she said, if you're having your own health issues, mental, physical, or whatever, then you would be able, right?
Correct. That's what the short term is like. If you are a caregiver and you're having psychological stress situation, you could fall under short-term disability. It's hypothetically if you don't have any PTO or vacation or sick time. So yeah, so that's why it's important that you know the difference. And then even for long-term disability, if your company has it, you can, if you're going to be out longer than 6 or 8 weeks, typically that's for short-term disability, that's what the long-term disability kicks in. And, it's important that you look at your policy before you decide to do anything. And then Nicole, another thing I will just kind of pop to my head is that when you are going to be a caretaker, it's important that you write down all the pros and the cons, because if you're going to work full time and still be a caretaker, you have to know what type of resources that are going to be available to you. Because I'm going to be honest, employers, they of course say they want to help you, but they still have a job to do. They still have board of directors they have to report to, bottom line, budget. So their company is still going to move on, but you are going to have to figure out what it is that you need. And so the other part of it is you can talk to your supervisor and see if they have some type of flex schedule. That's important because as a caregiver, you typically are not going to be able to work just a regular 8 to 5, because things will come up during the day that you are going to have to be away from your work. And so that's the first thing. See if they have a flex schedule.
But that's a really good idea, because remember when I started, I was working 8 to 4:30, a regular work day. But then I realized that I couldn't help with my mom working 8 to 4. So I, asked my employer, can I switch? I knew they had, I could, work in the evening. So they did allow me to spend 2 days where I worked like 4 to midnight. I worked after 4. And then I eventually started working just evenings only, which was really still beneficial still.
Mm-hmm. Right. And even like you said, working remotely, but I don't want to put that idea out, oh yeah, as long as you work from home, then it's fine. No, you still are going to need resources, even if you're working from home and being a caregiver. It's just like if you had children, you still need to keep an eye on what's going on in your environment with your loved one that you're caring for. Yeah. And the other thing that we touched on a little bit is, just say your company doesn't offer a short-term disability and you may not qualify from FMLA because you have to work a certain amount of hours in the past 12 months and you don't qualify. But if your company has EAP, so EAP, Employee Assistance Program, is something that you definitely can look at your employer. 99% of employers offer this, and the benefit is you don't have to pay for like a copay typically. Like if it's in your plan, you just go. You can go for mental health. They have resources for elderly care. They can even have, I think that's one of the places that we found this thing called A Place for Mom, that they will look for things or resources to help your mom if you want to keep her in your home, or if you need to,
or your loved one, right?
Correct. So those are the things I kind of wanted to talk about under the HR umbrella. Nicole, did I miss anything?
No, I think you talked about pretty much everything. FMLA, explain the difference between intermittent and regular FMLA. short-term disability, long-term disability, and then EAP and flexible scheduling. Those are all the things that we dealt with when I was caregiving and working full-time.
Right, right. And it's just important that you're honest with your employer. You know, it is so important that you try not to hide that you're being a caregiver, because it's just not going to work. You're going to have to be able to tell them what's going on with you and see what options they have available for you to do that.
And know your rights and your protection.
Yes, that is
as a
very true.
caregiver, you do have rights, and there are certain protections that you have because you are a caregiver.
Correct, correct. And, you know, I read this article, Nicole, that talked about, people don't realize, you know, when they talked about the great resignation, people think it's just, that they're just going to another job. They said that a lot of them are sandwich generation, where the caregiver has a family of their own, plus they're taking care of their parents. So I just thought that was really interesting. So we're going to see and hear a lot more about this in the next couple of years.
Right. Yeah, I think the pandemic has steered, a whole new conversations about working and caregiving. So
Yes.
like we said, we're going to start using our expertise, not just as caregivers, my sister as an HR executive and me as an attorney. So we'll have more podcasts definitely dedicated to what you need to know as a caregiver, your rights, responsibilities, and how to help yourself and protect yourself as well. Okay. Well, we thank you again. And please, if you have questions or comments or anything that you want to let us know about, put it in the comment section, hit like, hit subscribe, and then also share.
Yeah. Until next time.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
for watching.